In today's video, we are going to be speaking about minimalist black and white photography. It's a photography style that I really love myself. I've been doing it for around 2.5 years. And one of the photographers that I really like, well, I love Van Ho, obviously, everybody does, fantastic photographer. But another one that I really relate to is Alan Schaller, and I'm sure loads of you know him out there. And one of the reasons I'm going to be taking Alan Schaller as an example of this style of photography, and that I've been into his style of photography, is that he's a British photographer. He's a very current photographer, and he lives in London, so he shoots in the same sort of environment that I shoot. So when I go out, the light will be similar, the architecture will be similar, the shapes will be similar. So it's really someone that I can take good examples of and go out there and practice that style of photography. Since doing minimalist photography myself, I get a lot of questions about camera, lens, settings, technique, framing, lighting, contrast, and so on. So I thought I'd put together this video to help you out there with the most common questions that I get, and hopefully you can help you produce better minimalist style photography. Now, just a note, before we jump in and we get started, Alan Schaller is a seasoned vet. He's been doing this type of photography for a long time, and he uses a high-end Lycra M10 monochrome series camera. Now, not all of us can afford a camera like this, and I want to let you know that you do not need a £10,000 camera to produce stunning photography. These photos up on screen right now were all taken on an Olympus OMD10 Mark III with a Lumix 20mm 1.7 lens. And in total, this setup costs £300. They're just $400 secondhand from eBay. Fantastic little camera. It produces great photos, but obviously it's not going to compare to a full frame camera like the Lycra M10 or any other full frame camera, because it's got a tiny micro 4/3 sensor that's just not going to be able to cope with the dynamic range that we find in this style of photography. Now, saying that, it doesn't mean that you cannot produce great photos. Now, these photos coming up here, these were all taken on a full frame camera. Now you can see the difference in the highlights and the darks, the pure whites and the pure blacks. It's because it's a full frame camera. These were all taken the Canon 5D Mark IV with a 50mm 1.4 lens. Now this setup you can get for £800 from eBay or your favorite camera shop. So that's $1,000 and under, and you can produce some fantastic photos. Okay, so now that we have covered camera and lenses, and you know that you do not need a £10,000 camera to produce similar style photos, let's jump into my top tips that can help you produce better black and white minimalist style photography. Contrast. We're looking for contrast in our frame. So a lot of people, they think that on a bright day it's suited for color, and on a cloudy day, I've heard some photographers say, oh, it's better for black and white. That's not true. On a sunny day, it's actually better for black and white minimalist style photography, because we're looking for the contrast between the light and the shadows. And on a sunny day, it's obviously going to be a lot higher than on a cloudy day when everything is overcast and grey. That being said, on a cloudy day, we have many of those in London, you can still find high contrast in a frame. Think about being in a tunnel or under a bridge and looking out towards the sunlight, or maybe you're indoors looking out of a window or out of a doorway in a train station looking out towards the light. Standing in the dark and looking out into the light is a great way to produce high contrast images. I personally love going out on a sunny day, and we do find those in the winter months in London and Europe, and doing minimalist style black and white photography. So look at the screen here. I'm in a tunnel and I'm looking out towards the light. I've got my frame, got my settings, and I'm just waiting for the right thing to happen. So that's tip number one. We're looking for high contrast between the highlights and the shadow areas in our frame. Now that we've found an area with high contrast that is of interest, we're looking for a frame. Now, don't just jump into one frame. take a picture and run off. When I first started doing this style of photography, that's exactly what I used to do. I used to get a frame, oh, that's interesting, a diagonal line, take a picture, and then go. This is where you can move around, feel into the light, feel into the shadow. Think about taking a photo from the highlight side, or taking a photo standing in the shadow, or doing a 50-50 or 25-75. The point I'm making here is to play with the frame. Don't just take a picture and rush off. Go closer into the frame, stand further away. Depending on what lens you've got, you might want to change your lens. I actually prefer and would advise you to stick to one type of lens. Go out, make best friends with that lens, know exactly how it works, and practice, practice, practice. So then when you do see these frames or you see something happening, you know exactly where to stand in future. You know what frame's gonna work. At the start, don't put yourself under too much pressure, trying to reach for the sky and produce that amazing, fantastic work. You need to take your time. Give yourself some leeway to play, make mistakes and learn. Play with your frame. Don't just take that picture and run away. There are so many different frames within a frame. You'd really be surprised. So we found an area of contrast. We've played around with our frame and we're now standing in the perfect area. What you want to do next is predict what's going to happen. Take a look around, slow down and breathe. This type of photography is not about rushing. It's not about running around seeing how many photos you can take. This type of photography is all about intention. So slow down, breathe, and look around and see what's happening. Are people crossing over the road? Are people walking into the light? Are people walking away from the light? A cyclist? Are there a taxi going past? Is there a bus? Maybe it's a dog walking area and there are lots of dogs. Predict what's going to happen and think about capturing that person in the right part of the frame to give it balance. So take a look at this example here. I found a frame that I really like. It's pleasing to my eye. It's got high contrast, so it's really going to work for this minimalist style. I've got my frame. Now I'm just waiting and looking at what's happening around. There are people walking from the left to the right. There are people walking from the right to the left. I know that I want somebody in the middle walking through this patch of light. So I've predicted what's going to happen and now I'm just waiting for it to happen. And the amazing thing is, a lot of the times when I put this image in my head before I've actually taken it, something very similar happens and I capture that photo and it's almost like I've seen it already. So being prepared for what's going to happen ensures that you're not going to miss it. And when you do capture that photo that you prepared yourself for, it's really, really satisfying. So we found an area of contrast. We've got our framing that we like. We're predicting what's going to happen. Now you want to practice your settings. Take a few test shots. Doesn't matter what's happening in your frame, if there's people in there or not. Take a few test shots, get your settings right. Look into that frame, zoom into it. Are things nice and crisp? Are things nice and sharp? Have you got it in focus? Is your aperture correct? Do you need to change your ISO, your shutter, or your aperture? Now's the time to get your settings correct. So then when that person does walk through the frame, object, whatever it might be, you're ready to capture that photo. Do not wait for that magical moment to happen and then try and get your settings, because trust me, I've been there. You'll miss that moment and you'll feel so frustrated and so annoyed. Be prepared. This style of photography is all about intention. As I mentioned before, it's like fishing. You prepare yourself, you've got your bait, you've got your line out, you're comfortable in your chair, you've even got your drink by your side, you're waiting for the right thing to happen. If you're into that rush style of photography, this style of photography and this style of video is not for you. I'm all about taking your time, being calm, witnessing what's going around you and capturing that moment. So just to go back over the following steps, we found an area of contrast. We've now got our frame. We're taking our time, we're looking around, we're predicting the next moment, what we want to capture. We've taken some test shots and we've got our settings correct. Now it's time to capture that moment. Now you have captured that moment, Do not just run away. Look at that photo and examine it, and really be your critic, be your own critic. Do I need to change my shutter? Do I need to change my aperture? Do I need to change my ISO? Now's the time to do it. Change those settings if you need to, or maybe that person, that object, that thing is not in the right place on your frame. So maybe you need to change your location a little bit. Maybe you need to change your frame. Maybe you need to step into the frame or step out of the frame. Do not just rush away. You found a place of interest. You're out with your camera. You're in your flow state. Stay there. Get that photo. Wait for something unpredictable to happen. And once you've taken a good hard look at your photo, you've been a critic of your own work, and you're happy, now's the time to move on. So here is a bonus tip for you all. Give yourself a break. Stop putting yourself under so much pressure to produce that amazing photo on the level of Alan Schaller or Fan Ho. These guys are masters of their craft, and they've put in hours, days, weeks, months, years of work to produce photos like that. Give yourself a break. It's like riding a bike. You're not going to be fantastic at it straight away. You're learning the trade. Get out there, put the hours in, get to know your camera like it's an extension of your body, so that when you are at a scene and you find something, you know where the settings are, you know how to change the shutter, the aperture, the ISO, you know how to flick through the menu, you know how to underexpose or overexpose, you know exactly what your camera is seeing and how to adjust it to make it see what you want it to see. Go out there, have fun, practice, make mistakes, look at your photos, review them, be your own critic, and have fun. That is what photography is all about, is having fun. So just on that note, photography is like a meditation for me. When I'm out on the streets, 2 hours, 3 hours, sometimes 6 hours, sometimes longer, I'm just in a flow state. It's so beautiful. I just forget about all my worries and everything about my life, and it's just me out in an environment capturing life with my camera, and it's just such a beautiful thing, and I want other people to witness this. So maybe you're in a 9-to-5, maybe you're having problems with your life, maybe you're having troubles with your relationship. I want us to come together, practice photography, and get into a flow state and forget about all your worries. So if you're interested in attending some of my workshops, I'll be holding some in London, Lisbon, Paris, Barcelona, and so on. Make sure to sign up to my newsletter. You can see a link in the description below this video. Until the next time, get out there and take those photos.